Alright, sorry about that. Had to run and get a better screwdriver. So I'm going to set this aside so you can see this. So what we did so far is we took the cylinder out, which is right here, and we're going to be dealing with this in just a second. And right now, what we're going to do is we're going to take this gun apart. I'm going to show you here how to do that. So we're going to take a flathead screwdriver, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take the grips off, take the stack out, and it's always a good idea to make sure you're organized with this. And so I'm going to go ahead and set that aside right here. And some people, what they'll do is, this is called a grip screw. It screws in your grips. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure I don't lose that and just screw it in and set that aside. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I am going to take out the screw that holds the trigger assembly in. We're going to take that apart. It's good to take apart black powder firearms. I do so when I get home because I'm in my own home, and I like to be able to take them apart just so that they can get a thorough clean. You want to make sure that you do that simply because black powder is just so corrosive, so corrosive. It's not like working with smokeless powder, which is not as corrosive. You can shoot a smokeless powder firearm, and technically you don't have to clean it. You should clean it. That's proper firearms maintenance, but you don't have to. You won't end up with a pile of rust if you don't, but you will end up with a pile of rust if you don't clean a black powder firearm right away when you get home. So I was out with a really good friend shooting earlier today. It was her first time, and that was great. So she did a really great job. Calamity Jane has nothing on her. Alright, so I'm going to go over the different parts of the firearm. This right here, I don't know if you can see it, right here, this is called a trigger spring, and basically this is a piece of spring steel that operates as the spring for your trigger. So your trigger can have some spring to it and can function. So we're going to set that aside, and we're going to set the various screws aside here just so we don't lose them. And we're going to take out, this is your trigger, of course, and if you notice right here there's some oil mixed with some fouling, and that gets on things. You want to brush and clean that all off. So I'm going to go ahead and take the main spring out, which is this right here, and this is in the stock. It's between the grips of the firearm. And I'm going to go ahead and take the hammer screw out. Okay, we're going to take that out. I'm going to set that aside. We're going to take the hammer out. And before we do that, we are going to get in there and take the cylinder stop out. This is the cylinder stop, and the trigger screw goes through this right here. It goes through this hole right here. And this, of course, when you cycle the cylinder, this part comes up and stops the cylinder from continuing to rotate when you bring the hammer to full cock. Alright, there's one tiny screw in there I've got to get. So we're going to take that out. Alright, perfect. This is your cylinder spring. This right here is important because this will click behind the cylinder, and this helps the cylinder rotate, and this helps the cylinder stop when you want to bring the gun to half cock or full cock. So this is an important piece of equipment, and I'm finally going to bring the hammer out. And as you can see, there's probably, I don't know how good this is showing up really on this. This is just done off of a tablet, so I'm not sophisticated at all. There's a lot of black powder fouling on there. You just have to make sure that gets cleaned off, or else this will rust and it will pit the gun. So I'm going to set that aside. Next thing we want to do is we're going to take out the loading lever, and we're going to take this out right here. We're going to take this out. Again, this is the loading lever. So this is what you use to load the firearm. It is best with a black powder pistol. If you, black powder revolver like this, if you take out the cylinder, if you can, and if you have a loading stand, that's actually the best way to do it. If you're at the range, you know, that's great. If you're at the range, that's what I would suggest. For reenactments, of course, that's not historically accurate, so you would have to use the loading lever provided. Excuse me. So I'm going to set that aside, and then the last piece that comes out is simply your cylinder pin. This is the pin that the revolver rotates on, and this is just a solid piece of steel. Excellent. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start some water, and we're going to get hot water. We're going to get as hot as we can possibly stand it. Perfect. All right. Going, and then what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and soak the cylinder right here, and I'm going to show you what's going on with the cylinder. Alright, grab my hands a little bit here. Okay, so I'm going to show you what's going on here. What we have to do with the cylinder is we're going to take these nipples out. There's 6 chambers with this pistol. There's a 6-shot pistol. We need to remove the nipple from each chamber, and there is something called a nipple wrench to do that. And we are going to take this out. Now, again, some people watching this video might not want to be as thorough, and you don't really have to be this thorough, disassemble every single solitary part, but I like to, simply because I feel it maintains the firearm better. But sometimes you might be in camp, you might be, you know, in reenactment, you might be hunting, you might be fishing, and so you might not have access to that kind of wherewithal to be able to sit down and clean. But you want to make sure that with the black powder firearm, you want to make sure you keep it as clean as you possibly can, because as I said, it will rust and it will pit if you're not careful with it. Okay, so we're going to take all those off. And the cylinder is actually the most labor-intensive part of this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let the cylinder sit inside that water. And what that's going to do is that is going to loosen any black powder fouling that's in there. And there can be quite a bit in these cylinders, so you want to make sure you get that all good and hot and wet. A lot of times what you can do with cleaning black powder cylinders is you can use, or black powder firearms at all, is you can use simple dish detergent and water. You know, that's perfectly fine. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and we're going to go ahead and fill this up a little bit more. Alright. We're just going to make sure that gets in there, and then what I like to do, I'm going to shut this off for a second. What I like to do is I like to use a product called Black Solve, and this, probably see this better, Black Solve. And basically what it is it's a black powder solvent from Dixie Gun Works. If you ever get a chance, check out Dixie Gun Works at dixiegunworks.com. They did not pay me to say that. So just a free pitch for Dixie. So if you're ever, if you are a black powder enthusiast or reenactment or history enthusiast, please check them out. They sell very authentic reenactment gear and Civil War gear. So, but check out Dixie Gun Works Black Solve. It's a concentrate, and you can use this for patch lubricant. You can use it for freeing your cap and ball cylinders. Sometimes the cylinder tends to lock or freeze on that cylinder pin due to the black powder fouling. So to prevent that, you just put a drop, 2 or 3 drops of this in the cylinder pin. It won't foul up all day. So we're going to use that, and I'm going to go ahead and make a concentrate here with some water, and we're going to get a glass. All right. Excellent. All right, pour some of that in there. Okay, basically what I did, it turns into a blue liquid, and I'm just going to put the cylinder in there. This is soaking, perfect. Put that on its side, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the nipples in there and just let them soak. Let them soak in there, and that black solve will loosen any fouling that you see in there. Alright. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to simply take and I'm going to put some other parts in there, because that's always good to let that soak in there, and then I'll show you what we're going to do with the barrel right here. Okay. So as you can see, there's a lot of water used in the cleaning of a black powder firearm, and that's fine, and you're going to do that too out in the field if you're hunting. If you want to clean cylinders, some black powder shooters will clean out the cylinder, they'll shoot the cylinder, and they'll reload it for the next morning if they're carrying. And if you have just a camp, if you don't have any running water, what you're going to do is you're going to use boiling water. You're going to use water as hot as you can possibly get it, and a real strong bristle brush. And then hopefully you'll have some oil on there, just a little bit of oil, and I would check it over the next few hours to make sure you're not getting any rust. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's wet some patches with the black solve. And again, you can also do this with detergent. That's fine, but let's do this with some black solve and get this really, really clean. So we're going to clean this, and this is going to be good. So you can't over clean your firearm as far as I'm concerned, because a clean firearm is a happy firearm. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to push this through here just a few times, and this is saturated with black powder or black solve. And if you can see, I just did one pass, and it is blacker than a coal mine. So, and that's what you want. You actually want it to look like that, because that means that it's getting the fouling out. And it'll get out some unburned powder residue. If you ever find unburned powder, don't worry about that. That's natural for a black powder firearm. And a lot of people use black powder substitutes for black powder, and that's fine. You can use things like 777, you can use Pyrodex. There is a cleaner burning black powder substitute, and it's actually a little bit more accurate, and you have less fouling, and it's actually a better product. I tend to be a little traditional, so I tend to go with the true black powder, but there's nothing wrong with doing powder substitutes. Nothing wrong with that at all. Alright, we're just making sure this gets all saturated. Alright, and we're going to run this patch down again. make sure this gets all clean. Alright, if you can see, I'm just passing it back and forth like you would a regular firearm. There we go. Alright. Alright. There we go. We're going to continue this until the patch is all clean. And we're getting there. So, this is probably the most labor-intensive process of cleaning a black powder firearm. That is one thing that turns some people off to it, is that it is a more labor-intensive style of shooting. But if you don't mind the cleanup, and if you don't mind the occasional mess that you run into, it's very well worth the time and expense, and just it's fun. If you enjoy history, it's fun. So it is very recommended. Okay, I was just tightening that up. Alright, sometimes this cleaning jag loosens, and that is not a good thing. Sometimes you can lose that, and that is not too cool. Alright. So as I say, we're just going to keep doing that until it's clean. Okay. Perfect. Alright. As I said, you can buy this Black Solve online. If you live in Tennessee, you just go to Union City and it'll be right there. So that's where Dixie Gun Works is located. Okay, we're going to get in here with that. Perfect. Now the patch is starting to come out clean, which is a really good sign. Oops. Drop the grip in the sink there. There we go. Sometimes you can double up on patches to make sure that you're really getting into the fouling and all the stuff that you need to get into. Okay. There we go. Yeah, and that is coming out clean, and you're still getting some fouling, but you want to be, it pays to be quite religious around this stuff, because the clean gun, of course, is a happy gun. And a happy gun means a happy human. So this is good. And a clean gun is also a safe gun. That's one thing that I think sometimes beginners especially don't realize, is that it really pays to clean your gun and clean it well. Very, very well. Because as I said, a clean gun is a safe gun, and it just makes everything much better to go around. So I'm just going to go ahead and take a patch that's coated with the black solve, and I'm going to rub the exterior. I'm going to rub all exposed metal parts. And what's nice about this black solve is it just annihilates fouling. It's a really, really good product. I've been using it for a while, and ever since I started shooting black powder, I've been using this. And so I am just cleaning the inside of the frame, wiping it all down, and then what we're going to do is we're going to dry this off eventually, and then we're going to put a good coat of oil on everything to make sure that it does not rust. Okay, we're getting there. I know that this is kind of a boring part of the video, so if anybody wants to fast forward through this, I totally understand. My feelings will not be hurt. Okay. If you have a toothbrush, you can get into the smaller areas with a toothbrush, and you can really get that black solve down in there. And that's a very good thing. Okay. And as I said, it's better to overdo it as far as cleaning is concerned than underdo it, because once the metal pits and rusts, that's not good. That can be hard to bounce back from. Okay. Okay, we're getting there. There we go. And this is an older firearm, so some of the use is seen on the firearm, so that's of course not going to be able to be cleaned off. Could be polished, but I tend not to polish any brass that I work with outdoors, simply because I don't want that reflecting if I'm hunting and if I'm trying to remain hidden. So, excellent. So this frame has been totally cleaned with the black solve, and we are going to dry this off. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move on. We're going to go ahead and move on to the parts, and I'm going to show you what's up with that. So this is great. Again, it pays to get a really good dry off here, because again, any moisture will rust and pit this gun. Okay, there we go. Alright. Perfect. Okay, so one part we didn't get, so we're going to get in here where the hammer rests. Alright, and again, I hope you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm cleaning right here where the channel is, where the hammer goes, and that'll be good right in here, nice and clean. And once you start disassembling your firearm, you'll notice the different nooks and crannies it has. So it helps to have some good detail brushing. Old toothbrushes, even an old car detail brush will work. So, and you want to make sure that it's gentle enough that it's not going to scratch any finish or any type of bluing that you might have. So this is good. And I am going to look down the barrel, and a lot of times what you can do is you can use a flashlight. But I'm actually using the kitchen light. I'm looking right at it, and that barrel is clean. There is no fouling in that barrel whatsoever. Great. Yeah, that is super. There should be a mirror finish in that barrel. There should not be any speck of dirt or oil or any type of fouling. So, last step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to oil this, and I use a product for oil. If you've seen my other gun cleaning videos, you'll know that I use Mobile One Synthetic, but I'm not going to use that because that's a petroleum product on the black powder firearm. I'm going to use a product called AgriGuard. And again, I don't know if you can see this, but this is also sold by Dixie Gun Works. Another free pitch for them. And it is an anti-rust metal protectant compatible with black powder firearms. It's microfine quality, so it will seep into the tiniest crack you may have in metal, the tiniest pore, screw hole, and it adheres to that, and it does not gum the metal up. So that is really great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a patch, and I am going to go ahead and put a little bit there in the corner, and that's really all you need. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to oil the outside And I'm going to oil the frame, which I'm doing right here. I'm going to oil the inside of the frame, where the cylinder sits, oil the back strap. Yeah, I'm going to oil all outside parts, and you really just need a thin coat of oil, but it is important to oil it, or else, as I said before, you will be dealing with rust. And that's, again, not easy to bounce back from. So you're going to do a real light coat of oil, and we are going to get some more on there. There we go. Perfect. Alright. This is good. Okay. We're going to get all in there. Alright. Perfect. Okay. Alright. So the frame is done. Actually, no, it's not. What I have to do is I have to oil the bore. So what I like to do is I like to hold the gun like this, and I like to drip a little bit of oil in there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow that up with a patch, with an oiled patch. And then that should coat the barrel with oil inside, and that's exactly what you want. With this oil, you want every single piece of the rifling covered, you want every single nook and cranny in there oiled to the best of your ability. It's always good to over oil your gun, I would say, if you're going to store it for any length of time. That's excellent, because you just don't want corrosion, and that is so easy to do with black powder. That's so easy to get corrosion and fouling in there, and again, that's not fun. That just makes for a mess, and it makes for a very unhappy firearm, and it affects your accuracy, and it's just not good. Okay, great. So that patch is done. That's all an oiled patch. Great. Yeah, that's excellent. Barrel is oiled, and so this frame of the 1858 cap and ball revolver is done. So I'm going to go ahead and set that aside, and then I'm going to bring out the cylinder and the related pieces that we had soaking in the black powder solvent solution, and that's really good because that loosened all of that solvent, or that fouling up, so that'll be just an easy takedown. With that, we can take that stuff right down and right out of there. There we go. Okay. Alright, there we go. Perfect. Okay. And we're getting there. I always like to get the frame and the barrel out of the way while this stuff is soaking. That's just what I do, but you may have a different view, or you may have a different plan of attack with that. So this just absolutely liquefies the black powder fouling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a toothbrush, and I am going to pour some black solve on the toothbrush, and I am just going to go to town. This is good, and this fouling will just liquefy it. And it'll drop right off, especially if you soak it beforehand. And again, you can do this with detergent. If you get a mild dish detergent like Dawn dish soap, or if you do like a Dove dish soap, you can do that. And this will really, the dish soap will work too. That'll cut the fouling as well. So, but I find black solve to work even better than dish soap does. But if you're a little bit more of a traditionalist, then dish soap is what you want to do, or even very hot boiling water. Okay, so I brushed that off with the Dixie Gun Works Black Solve, and that looks much better than it did before. I don't know if you can see the difference on the video, but it was quite corroded just a little bit earlier. And that is a clean hammer. There's obvious signs of use, but you're never going to get it totally perfect. But you should be able to get all the fouling out just so you don't have rust. Alright. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to oil the part, and I'm going to use the same patch. And for the parts, you just want a light coat of oil. You don't need to saturate it, but I would just make sure you have an oiled patch handy, like I have here. And I'm just going over this with an oiled patch, and you just want to keep that oiled, light coat of oil. I'm just going to set that aside. I'm going to do the same thing with the loading lever. I'm going to do the same exact thing. Loading levers, in my experience, don't really get dirty. They can if you're out all day shooting, but these parts right here, the loading lever and the plunger, don't get that dirty at all. So just a light soak in dishwater, detergent, Dixie Gun Works Black Solve, you know, that will do the trick with that. So, and that polishes it up very nice. Alright. Yeah, perfect. Alright, same thing. Same strategy with the patch. I'm going to do the patch. Alright, and I would just oil every single exposed metal part, and this will be good. Alright, so that's freshly oiled and freshly cleaned, so we're going to set that part aside. Alright, onto the cylinder pin. So this will just take a quick brush, as that had time to soak. And sometimes if you're out all day, the cylinder pin does get dirty, because that's where a lot of the fouling will end up. I know at the beginning of the video I mentioned that you can put a drop or two of Dixie Gun Works Black Solve on the cylinder pin to stop the cylinder from seizing as it rotates on the cylinder pin. So that's what I do whenever I start shooting a black powder firearm, especially a pistol. I just put a drop or two of Dixie Gun Works Black Solve on the cylinder pin, and I've never had a problem with the seizure. Here we go, oiled. We're going to set that aside, and we're going to go on to the different parts, the little parts. We're going to clean that. Alright. And again, this doesn't really need a heavy-duty brushing since it's been soaking in solvent. Alright, and we're going to dry that off, and we're just going to oil it real quick here. A few swipes with the patch, and that should be freshly oiled. This is your trigger spring right here, and again, that's always good to keep rust and pit free, and we're going to set that aside. And next up is the cylinder stop. So the cylinder stop, that does sometimes get a little bit more fouled than the other parts on here. So we're just going to clean this, again with a toothbrush, just dipped in black solve. Alright. Make sure this gets all cleaned, because any of these parts can rust or pit, and you don't want that, of course. I know I've said that about 500 times during the course of this video, but The reason I keep saying that and reiterating that is because with black powder firearms, you cannot wait to clean them. You just simply cannot. Especially if you shoot traditional black powder like I happen to, you must clean that. So, alright. So I'm going to go ahead and oil this and see if I can get in between here. There we go. There. Perfect. Alright. That's oiled, and I'm going to set that aside. Alright, so we're going to continue. We've just got the cylinder spring, the nipples, and then I've got the trigger and the mainspring. And then we're going to go ahead to the cylinder. And basically, that's going to be an easy fix. That's going to be an easy clean. Because as I said, that's been soaking in solvent. And basically, with the cylinder, you just take some patches. You can also take a brush and just brush out each chamber and make sure you get that black powder fouling out of there. Okay, we're getting there. We are getting there. Alright. Okay, so we're getting there. Alright. Okay, that's done. So now, what I like to do with the nipples is I like to brush the threading here, and you'd be surprised at how much gunk you get out of there. You would be very surprised. Some people don't, and that causes the nipples to seize in the cylinder. Another tip I've seen too is people put a small amount of anti-seize tape, plumber's tape, on the nipple threads, and that will work too. So that is very good. Okay, perfect. Alright. And I always like to put a drop of, we'll do that when we install it. So I always like to put a drop of lubricant on the threads of the nipple. Okay. Perfect. Alright. Yeah, make sure that gets all in there. Okay. And again, I know this is kind of boring, so if you want to fast forward through this, you certainly can. Put that aside and make sure I don't lose count here. Actually, I think I might have lost count. I only see 5 nipples. I only see 5 nipples. No. You know what? The reason I only see 5 nipples is because I only took 5 nipples off. So, it sounds like something out of Star Wars. Something that has 5 nipples. Anyway. Alright. So, perfect. Alright. So if I'm a little bit more weird in this video, it's just because I'm pretty tired. So, just got home a few hours ago from shooting and wanted to take a rest a little bit, and this is the result. So, I am just a little loopy. So, I apologize. But I hope it makes for an entertaining video. Okay. Okay, perfect. Alright. So that's done. And I'm going to dry them off. Then what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and clean the cylinder. And then as we are cleaning the cylinder, we're going to reinstall the nipples and then the rest of the parts of the gun, and then we will be all set. Alright. There's that. And this. Okay. Excellent. Alright. Okay, so those are all clean. So now our last step. So we're going to clean the cylinder, and this is where you have to be kind of meticulous with this, because this does have some nooks and crannies, both here in each chamber and here in the front of the cylinder. You have to be very careful that you do get as much fouling out of there as you possibly can. So again, what I'm going to do is, it's been soaking, but I'm going to take another black Solve soap patch, and then I am going to take the short end of the pistol cleaning ramrod and go ahead and work that patch in there. Make sure I get all types of fouling out of there. As you can see, the patch is a little darker than it was when it first went in there. So I'm going to do that again, and I'm going to make sure that I get all the fouling out of there. You want to do this for each chamber. And again, I know it might seem kind of tedious, but again, it's always good to over clean it than under clean it. Always good. Okay. Make sure to get that in there, and then we're going to do this again. Okay. Okay, we're really going to work this in there, because that's so very important to do that. There we go. Okay. There we go. Perfect. Alright. There we go. Okay. Excellent. Then what I'm going to do is take the toothbrush, and I want to get in the areas right here where the nipples sit, to make sure I get all of that fouling out of there. This is probably the most trickiest part, I think, of cleaning a cap and ball revolver. And if you have any other tips of cleaning cap and ball revolvers, please feel free to leave that in the comment section, and feel free to comment on this. So, because I'm certainly far from an expert, and I can always learn. So if anybody else has any tips that they'd like to share, please bring that forward. Alright. Okay. I'm going to clean this off totally, and what we're going to do is we're going to follow it up with, you guessed it, an oiled patch. Alright. I'm going to make sure that we put a light coat of oil in there. Light coat. So, it doesn't have to be heavy, but just a light coat, just so that we know what we're doing here. Okay. Perfect. Alright. I want to make sure this is all oiled. Oil the bag here. Alright. Oil the front. Okay. So here is where we can put the nipples back in. And as I said earlier, what I like to do is I like to just put a drop of oil on the threading right here. Alright, that's all I do. And I like to do that, and that just helps oil that, and it helps keep the internal threading clean. Now, when you're screwing these in, you just want to hand tighten it. You don't need to put a death grip on the wrench. I just do, when I start to feel it go snug, I just do a quick hand tight, and then I just move on to the next chamber. There we go. Perfect. Alright. There we go. Okay. Alright. As I say, I'm just hand tightening this. Go. Okay. Excellent. Okay, 2 more to go. Okay, last but not least. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So the nipples are screwed in, and they're all there, and I like to look down, and again I can see enough by the kitchen light to, I can see the touch holes to the nipples are clear, and there's no fouling in there. And what I'll do too is, just as a one final step, I will take a nipple pick and I will poke through each nipple just to clear it of oil, if any oil got in the touch hole of the nipples at all. There we go. Yep, they are all clear, no fouling. Looks good. Alright, so now comes the time where we can finally reassemble the gun. Alright, I'm going to bring the frame back over and clear a little space for it. Okay, so now this is the trigger, and that didn't get much fouling on it at all. Perfect. Alright, so now what we're going to do, I always start by reassembling the grips right here. And there's my screwdriver. Huh, I don't even need one for that. Alright. So I'm going to go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and put the mainspring back in. And no, I'm not, because I'm going to assemble the hammer. As I said, I'm a little tired. Good thing I'm just cleaning the firearm and not firing it. So this is good. Alright, so we're going to start with a hammer, and I'm going to reinstall the cylinder spring. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the hammer back in like this, and you'll notice that it's going to go down a little bit, and part of it is going to stick out the bottom right here, and that's okay, because what I'm going to do is on the side of that, I'm going to take this cylinder spring and I'm going to put it up here so that these 2 screw holes, this screw hole and this screw hole on the cylinder spring, can line up. And I want to make sure that I'm putting the cylinder spring in with the spring facing the back of the firearm. So I'm going to line that up, and then I'm going to use the tiny, 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 tiny screw, and I'm going to screw that back in. Okay, and that is good. That is all set, and I'm going to reset the hammer. Perfect. Okay. So I've got that set, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reinstall my cylinder stop. And this is going to go, if you can see, this is where the hammer is, and this is where the cylinder spring is, right in here. If you can see this right in here, I don't know how well you can see that. And I'm going to put the cylinder stop in just like this, and this should fit up inside, and we are going to line up that screw hole right there. That's perfect. Alright. And in companion to that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my trigger back in, and the trigger just goes on that side of the cylinder stop. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and find the correct screw that screws all of this in. And there's one screw that goes through these two pieces of metal that screws that and locks that back into place. Alright, let's try this once. Perfect. Okay, and as you can see, I'm screwing this back in. Alright, oops. One of those magnetic, cheap screwdrivers. Alright, so this should work. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the hammer screw back in. And that should go in just like this. Okay, perfect. Okay, so far I've done the hammer, and then I've done the trigger, and then I've done the cylinder stop, which is here, and then I've done the spring, the hammer spring, which you can't see anymore, but it is right here. I don't know if you can see that with the video at all. I don't know if you can see that. So, alright. Now what I have to do is I have to reinstall my spring, my trigger spring, and I'm just going to do a light coat of oil. And again, you don't have to saturate it, but it does help to get some on there. There we go. Perfect. Alright. And I'm going to go ahead, and basically this just fits on there like this, like so, and then I am going to screw that down, and it should be a flat screw like this. Well, hi! My cat just stopped by to say hi. She's pretty cool. Pretty fuzzy, actually. Okay, and again, you just want to hand tighten this stuff. Okay, so I'm going to try that. Okay, that's working good. And I'm going to reinstall. This is your main spring. And the main spring goes in just like this, and it goes up against the hammer inside here. Alright, so I'm going to install this, and then I'll show this. Perfect. So basically, again, I don't know if you can see this, but it should go up against the hammer in there, and there's a flywheel, what I call a flywheel, that the hammer rolls against the mainspring when you cock it. So, and then the mainspring just goes in that groove in the frame of the gun. So this should